Hello, Abigail here with the astrology of Virgo season. Of course, probably the most important part about this season is it's eclipse season, guys, and it is our first kind of cohesive and, in a way, our last cohesive eclipse season because next season we will be already transitioning into the Leo Aquarius axis, which is axis, not access, axis, which is a fresh new eclipse cycle. We still have some carryover into the fall because that's how eclipses work in most astrology. There's never a firm delineation. There's usually a retrograde, not with eclipses, but there's a retrograde. And with the eclipses, there's like paired up eclipses of one's group of signs and another group of signs. But this one is all in Pisces and all in Virgo. It's also kind of unique because we have 3 moons in Virgo season. It doesn't always happen. It means that both the first and the last moon have to be at very early degrees, very early. So like 0 and then the very late degree of 29. And that's what we have. And because of these, pardon me, because of these extremes, we have a non-eclipse new moon the minute we crack in to Virgo season, because it's so far away from the eclipse point, the nodes of the eclipse, which are kind of the area where eclipses happen. And then we have a Pisces eclipse in the middle, and then that very late Virgo 29 degrees eclipse, which is going to be a doozy. So buckle up. But this season is really refreshing. We get all of the personal planets changing signs because of that, because of where it is. Now, often we usually get Venus and Mercury changing signs. We don't always get Mars changing signs because of how the length of its cycle. So everything is getting refreshed, especially in the beginning of the season. And then Venus and Mercury are going to be moving into 2 different signs. So, and one right after the other, they're like synced up, moving into separate signs. So this is really a breath of fresh air. Now, eclipses are always a lot, but what I tell my clients and people who ask is that eclipses really just take what is happening and bring them to their natural end. If something is meant to end, the eclipses take it there lightning fast. If there's a celebration or an attainment upcoming, the eclipses move that up forward and make it even bigger. So don't just feel the eclipses tear things up, but know, and this is not fear mongering, but just know that if there is a health issue that's not being taken care of, that can get to an extreme edge if it's not dealt with. So, same with like if there is an issue with your home, or this all depends on where it falls in your chart. If there's an issue with your home or with your career or with your family, it'll take that to the extreme. If there's something that you're planning on celebrating or something that you've started already that's going really well, that is going to be amped up into that. Just know that it's all about perception because some of us can think things are going well and they're actually not, and we're kind of in a cycle of toxicity. So just because you're comfortable with it doesn't mean the universe thinks it's best for you. That's just a little caveat. But moving into the astrology, also you can ask me questions in the comments if none of this is clear, because I still feel like we're in Mercury retrograde, even though it's direct. It's those post-eclipse degrees, and I'm Mercury ruled, so rough stuff. All right, so Virgo season starts on the 22nd of August. And then the very next day, we have that beautiful new moon. This is a great time to set up our desires and our wants and our needs going into eclipse season. Because once the eclipses get started, there's not a whole lot you can do energetically to manipulate. And if you try, you can sometimes overdo it and overcorrect. So my kind of general rule is do what you can before eclipse season and let the universe take the wheel. Then on the 25th, Venus goes into Leo, and it'll be going into very swiftly into the retrograde degrees. So just know that Venus is now trotting the path of the retrogrades. And so we get to feel that it's also trotting the path of a trine to the Venus retrograde back in the spring. So Virgo season, especially for Venusian things like values and relationships and romance, are all going to be getting this call back to the spring. So just be prepared for some of those themes to pop back up. Pop back up. Also remember Venus was retrograde during last eclipse season. So there's a lot of interconnectivity and like themes getting tied in. So if you feel like even with all the chaos, things feel like old news or like something's coming back that you thought was over, just know this is the process of energy being recycled and re-understood. Then we go with Saturn on the 1st, re-entering Pisces for the last time. It'll be there until the beginning of 2026, and it's our kind of final curtain call for Saturn in Pisces. If you have a Saturn return in Pisces, this is your little last moment of those really intense Saturn lessons, unless you were Saturn ruled. But for everyone else, the last kind of Saturnian lesson um, of your Saturn return. And for those who are going into their Saturn return with the Aries Saturn transit, this is a bit of a reprieve where these lessons are going to take a little pause and you're going to go back to the house where you were working in with Saturn before. So it's going to feel like a bit of a stalling, a bit of a redirection. Know that it's going to kick back up in the beginning of 2026. Then the very next day, on the 2nd, we get Mercury entering into Virgo. And Mercury's in domicile in Virgo, so it's a nice bit of relief to have Mercury fully out of the degrees of the retrograde, fully functioning, moving through Virgo. It's also tracing the steps of the sun, and it's going to catch up in this month too. So we also get a Mercury cazimi. So there's a really good energy for communication and understanding, which is going to be really helpful with the eclipses because last time, yes, Mercury was retrograde. And so this time we're kind of getting a nice breath. It's also going to be transiting. I don't know why words aren't working today, but we're going to continue transiting the degrees in Pisces as an opposition, but it's in conjunct the degrees that it transited through Aries last year. So there's a bit of relief, especially at the beginning, where we get to kind of take a deep breath and be like, okay, we did the Mercury retrograde in Leo, and we did the Aries retrograde. And now we get a little moment to kind of digest and sit and process new things and exist a little more clearly until we hit the later degrees, which we can talk about later. And that'll happen, it moves pretty quickly. So that'll happen towards the middle of September. But we get like a week or two of just fresh energy with Mercury. So if you are Mercury ruled, Gemini rising, Virgo rising, or just have a heavy Mercury signature in your chart, enjoy. It's going to feel a lot better. And you're going to feel like there's a lot more traction for your thoughts and your creativity and your plans. And then moving forward, we have Uranus stationing retrograde, and this will also take it back into the sign of Taurus. And it won't shift back until April. I believe it's April of 2026. Obviously, we're not out of Gemini yet, but this is the beginning of that trip back. And that's on the 6th. And then on the 7th of September, we have the total lunar eclipse in Pisces at 15 degrees, very middle of the sign. Check out anything that has a trine or a square. So trine, Cancer, Scorpio, anything within 5 degrees of either side. And then with the squares, anything on a mutable square. So the opposition of Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius. Those are kind of the major ones, or conjunctions. So directly on it, or oppositions, directly opposing it. So just keep an eye out for that. It's going to be bombastic. In Pisces, I think it's going to be a lot of really great subconscious spiritual work. So trust to know that it's not always going to be obvious what's happening, especially towards the middle of this Virgo season. Allow the ambiguity to exist and trust that the universe is doing what it needs to do as it happens. Then on the 13th, we have the Mercury cazimi, and this is a domicile Mercury cazimi. It is direct. This is going to be a really sweet moment between eclipses to feel a little bit of connection and stability. And I do feel connected during eclipse season. It's just a very kind of raw, primal, aggressive connection versus warm and tender. If you're a chaos demon, it might feel warm and tender. I am not a chaos demon. I am a mushroom gnome or a garden gnome or a little, I don't know, stump elf. I am not a chaos creature. Chaos happens, but I do not participate willingly. So we have that really beautiful cazimi. If you are wanting kind of a day to feel a little bit more stable and to find a little bit more zen, mark the 13th of September on your calendar. Then we have Mercury entering into Libra. This one is neither here nor there. It's not domicile. It's not in fall. It's not retrograde. It isn't an air sign. This is about connecting. This is about resetting things and kind of re-understanding stuff. This is also the opposition to those Mercury retrograde degrees in the spring. So there might be some stuff that you need to set right or rebalance that's kind of been out of whack since the spring, and just the energy has not let up. And so after the eclipses with this Mercury Libra moment, you really get to enjoy this. And the very next day, on the 19th, Venus goes into Virgo. Now, Venus is in fall in Virgo. It's not super happy. It can get a little nitpicky, but it's also good for clearing house and kind of reorganizing relationships. If you feel like a relationship has kind of fallen off or you haven't spoken to a person in a long time, Venus is in Virgo is a great time to reconnect. It's a great time to establish boundaries and structures and function around a relationship. The reason that Venus isn't super happy about this is that Venus wants to sit on a chaise longue and eat grapes and be kissed and told they're beautiful and have beautiful scents sprayed around them. They don't want to have to do labor in relationships, but it is an opportunity and an energetic time to get up off the couch, sadly, and put on an apron and get to kind of scrubbing up our relationships and getting in touch with our values outside of maybe the kind of more glorified aspects of them, and kind of see them as they are, and tidy them up, and trim off maybe a few things that have gotten a little wild and unpredictable. And then the very next day, on the 20th, we have the 29 degrees uh, solar eclipse in Virgo. 29 degrees is the anaretic degree. So 29 degrees at any sign is called the anaretic degree. It is this moment where like everything, all of the energy within the sign is built up right before you go into the next sign. So it is going to be a lot, especially if you have placements there, or any type of aspect. So give a little check in your chart to get the vibe check. I will also say, it doesn't have to be me, but eclipse season is a great time to get a chart reading or a past life reading. It can often amplify clarity and really kind of expedite some understanding, which can be helpful. It can also be overwhelming, but if you're ready for it, it can be really beneficial. And then the final kind of like half day that we have in this Virgo season is the 22nd, which is when the sun does move into Libra. But right before, when we're still in Virgo season, Mars goes into Scorpio. So now Mars is domicile. And so Mars is thrilled to be where it is. Also, this is the first time that Mars is in domicile or in any sign where it has an exaltation or kind of a home place since that delicious, delicious Leo Cancer retrograde. So this is the first time that Mars is actually getting to really enjoy itself, to really dig deep. This is also our precursor into the fall. Obviously, we're not in the fall quite yet, but having Mars in Scorpio during the fall and during this season is going to feel really good and fun and spooky and spiritually liberating, a bit violent in a fun way. So you can look forward to Libra season and Scorpio season having this, and I don't think all of Scorpio season has Mars in Scorpio, but Libra season and Scorpio season will have a hint of this Mars energy, and it's going to feel really good. And then after, Scorpio season, it goes into Sagittarius and Capricorn. And Sagittarius, it's a fire sign. It doesn't have like any special kind of dignity, but it does get to kind of play, which it loves. And then it goes into Capricorn where it's exalted. So we kind of get a stretch of Mars being really happy after being really frustrated for a long time. So this is really great. And I'm looking forward to the next few Mars transits. But yeah, this is the kind of overview of the astrology of this season. I always encourage people to use the transits to learn about their own chart and their own life. Astrology works in multi-dimensions. It is both a explanation of the past, it can be a predictor of the future, and it can be a developing idea within the moment, a developing relationship with the planet within the action. And all of these things can be true at once. So I encourage you this Virgo season with these eclipses to get in touch with the multidimensionality of astrology if that's something you're interested in, and also the multidimensionality of spiritual work and everything else. Also, just a little heads up to anyone who's interested, but a lot of people I've been seeing have been having spirit and deities and ancestors really, really wanting to reach out and work with them. And I think it is a sign of the times. So if there is spirits knocking at your door, or are spirits knocking at your door, if your ancestors are calling, if there's a deity calling to you, don't wait. open that door this Virgo season and see who asks to come in. And I say asks because they should ask. Any spirit who comes barging in without consent doesn't have your best interest at heart. And maybe you can learn to work with them. I prefer not to. Anyways, my loves, that is the overview of Virgo season. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the comments. You can DM me on Instagram. Um, but yeah, feel free to use this as you will. It is the companion to the tarot scopes, which are the tarot readings for this season, and you can use them in tandem if you so choose. Anyways, I love you all, and I will see you in a different space and time.